Okay, if we talk about children literature, we cannot neglect it, the aspect around children literature itself. When and where the children literature being created. For example, one of the children literature that is very famous is Enid Blyton, The Famous Five. If we talk about The Famous Five, we cannot neglect it about what happened in England at that time, and also the aspect of nature, the aspect of culture in European and especially in England for sure. Telling about children literature context, at least there are three kind of the context in children literature. First, it is social context, cultural context, and identity context. The three of the context, social, culture, and identity, it is intertwined. It means that each other from the social context, cultural context, and also identity context, it is interconnected. The social context cannot separate it from cultural context, and cultural context cannot separate it with the identity context. Okay, I will give you one of the example in children literature works. For example, in fairy tales, the story of the fairy tales in Brother Grimm. If we talk about Brother Grimm from Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, we will talk about the context of social. What's happened in Germany at that time? What is the culture in Europe and especially particularly in Germany at that time? And also the identity of European. Some of the character as identity in literary children literary works. For example, unicorn. Another example is Pegasus, or troll, or maybe ogre, and etc. That characters is a kind of identity. That character is grow up from the social life in Europe, and also it is a part of cultural aspect in European. Another example of this context is also paradise bird, or in some part of European they call it golden bird. The golden bird, we cannot find it in Indonesia for sure, but we could find it in some areas in Europe. Because why? Because it is a kind of the social and cultural and also as an identity of the European. Paradise bird is one of the characters in European fairy tales, and usually paradise bird or golden bird is as the helper of the hero. Further, if we talk about the children literature and the socio-cultural context, for sure we will talk about two aspects in the context of children literature. For example, in fairy tales and also in the folk tales, first context is ordinary people and noble family reach the success through the struggle. It means that some of the motive in children literature, it is coming from the socio-cultural context like supernatural tasks. In some area of Europe, for example, some of the socio-cultural context, it is according to noble family. It means because according to the social life, some area in Europe is a part of the empire in the past time. Empire like Habsburg Empire, that is one of the biggest empire in Europe, and some of the area like the Hungary, and also Germany and Austria, for example, it is a part of the Austro-Hungarian or Habsburg Empire. So that's why it gave the influence to the story, especially to the folktale and fairy tale from Germany, from Austria, and also from Hungary, that the characters, especially the characters, telling about the prince, the princess, the king, and the queen, and also the duke and the duchess, about the family of the noble family life. It is because of the socio-cultural context. It is influenced by socio-cultural context because the social context is the context of the big empire in Europe. It is different with Slovenia, for example, and also in Czech Republic or Czechia and Slovakia, because why Slovenia, Czech, and Slovakia, it is a kind of the apart, only apart, colonized and occupied by the bigger empire in Europe. So they are only apart, the main, not the main empire. That's why some of the fairy tales and also the folk tales from Czech Republic, Slovakia, and also Slovenia, there are tell a lot about the ordinary people, like farmer, merchant, draper, and maybe like the sailor and other ordinary people, like maybe carpenter and etc., as the main characters in folktale and fairy tales. Then, as the farmer, they try to get success. How to get success? For sure, the ordinary people or the farmer will be depicted to get success by, maybe for example, the ending is married with the princess that live in the big castle. It is some of the typical in children's story from Slovenia, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. Not princess and the prince or the king and the queen married with the queen, but farmer will married with the prince, or the merchant will married with the princess. It is the typical, especially in children literature, fairy tales, folk tales, and also legend in Slovenia, Slovakia, and also maybe in Czech Republic as well. The second aspect in children and sociocultural aspect in children literature is the noble family convinces the moral and religious values. Um, Unintentionally, fairy tale and folktale, some of the fairy tale and folktale in Europe will be convinces the moral and religious values. And if you talk about the moral and religious values, for sure, it is the moral and religious values according to the uh, very social and cultural context, according to the very social and cultural context in Europe. For example, according to the Christianity, because Christianity is a part of culture in Europe. If we talk about the Christianity, one of the example is in Paradise on the Golden Bird. There are three princes, and the three princes try to get some of the success in their life, and because they want to get something, for example, to get the golden bird, so the king make a kind of hero. So who is the winner? For sure, the winner is in the third prince, not the number one, not number two, and not number three. Because why? Because according to Christianity, they have the concept the third for number one, and from zero to hero, from zero to the hero. It means that it is according to the Christianity, or according to the concept of the Christianity as a part or the basic part of the socio-cultural context in Europe, and also influence to the children literature works like fairy tale and also folk tales. Well, another aspect that influence the social and cultural context in children literature, in especially or particularly in Europe. At least there are three kind of the main point. The first is Reformation era, the second is Industrial Revolution, and the third is gender. Reformation era, it is originated from Germany by Martin Luther King, and it is the Reformation or the changing in Europe during medieval. Because of what? Because of the protests, or to revise, to reform the dogma, the dogmatics or the values in Christianity at the time, because the Christianity in Europe at the time has been abused their power. So Martin Luther in Europe tried to revise, tried to change, tried to reform the values in Christianity. So Martin Luther with 99 theses tried to protest to the power of the Christianity in Rome, in Italy. So he made 99 theses in Europe. So Martin Luther makes some of the changing, especially in the church and some of the values in Christianity, and using some of the children's story as well. Using some of the children's story. If the first time the children's story or children literature only focus on how to educate the children to get the heaven and frighten them with the hell as the punishment. We talk about hell and the heaven, evil and good, the aspect of evil and good, and if you doing something like the good deed in your life, you will go to the heaven and etc. But after the Reformation era, children literature telling a lot about education, about the various kind of the story. For example, like in 19th century, like Brother and Jacob Grimm in Brother Grimm, like Hans Christian Andersen, and also like Pujinan and Chova. They use the children literature for the national revival, to voice or to deliver about some of the political agenda. So it is not telling more about heaven and the hell as the reward and punishment from the God, but after 19th century, after the Reformation era, or because of the Reformation era, the children literature not only telling about hell and the heaven, but it has the various kind of the story. It has many kinds of the plot, like uh, you have seen in Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, like the cruel stepmother, and then the cruel sister, and how somebody try to gain their aim, how the ordinary people like the farmer married with the princess, and etc. And secondly, the main point that changed the or influenced the children literature is industrial revolution. Industrial revolution has been given a lot of changing in Europe. Because why? Do you know that the children at that time, at the 10 years or maybe 11 years, they work in some of the factories. It has been changing because many people will talk or will think about money, and if in the previous era of industrial revolution, many people that work in factory, mostly above 17 or 18 years old, but after industrial revolution, some of the children also working in the factories. Because of Industrial Revolution, some of the children's stories telling more about this one. For example, Oliver Twist, the novel entitled Oliver Twist, telling about the children, how the children, the kid, work in and live in poverty and work very hard in factory. Because of what? Because they need of money, because they need of maybe economics, because of the economic condition, economic life so hard because of industrial revolution. People try to compete to get a lot of money in their life, and the life is really hard for sure. And another example of industrial revolution children literature is Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. They are telling about how the people disbelieve about the gods. The people uh, don't want to celebrate the Christmas, and because they don't believe to the God, but they don't believe to celebrate the Christmas. So tree of the spirit coming and try to persuade and to make the people, the main character, aware that the God is very important, that celebrating the Christmas is very important for them. So it is because the effect of the industrial revolution that happened in Europe. And the third point is gender. The third point is gender, because gender in Europe is very really important, and also it is a big issue in Europe, like self-sacrification, that women usually depicted as self-sacrifice angel at the house, and also women is modesty people. It is a kind of the issue in children literature. The fairy tales that telling more about the self-sacrifice or self-sacrification of the woman. It is depicted in by Madame de Villeneuve. Madame de Villeneuve uh, is the writer of Beauty and the Beast. She was from French, I think. And you know that in self-sacrifice, in it is depicted in Beauty and the Beast. You know the Bella or Belle, we call it Belle. Belle tried to sacrifice herself for the father. So it is a kind of the good example how gender is one of the main issue in children literature during medieval era in Europe. Well, next we will talk about the children literature and identity. Yeah, like my statement at the first time, while we talk about the socio and cultural issue, we will talk about the identity issue. We cannot neglect the identity issue, because socio cultural and identity is interconnected. It is in one unity. About the children literature and identity, for sure, the children literature like folktale and fairy tales, because it is the source and the root is from the society. For sure, it is a kind of the absolutely it is a kind of the identity of one area of one nation. Like if you are Europe, where are you from? Sweden, or maybe Hungary. If you are from Czech, or are you Indonesian? So for sure you should know about the your own identity as Indonesian. And for sure, because fairy tale and folk tale, it is really according basically from the society. It is or it was born from the society. So consequently, children literature like for fairy tale and folk tale, it is a kind of your identity as Indonesian. As an example, if you are from Madura, what is your identity as Madura? You know about Raden Sagoro.
You should know about the Joko Tole. You should know about Potret Koneng. You should know about Trunojoyo and etc. Because why? Because Trunojoyo and also Potret Koneng, Joko Tole and etc. They are from Madura. Raden Sagoro, the origin of Madura. You should know, you should identify yourself as Raden Sagoro. Raden Sagoro actually really from Java across to Madura and live in Geger Hill in Bangkalan. And then you know about it. This story is orally telling from generation to the other generation till today, for example. And as Madura, who are you? You should know about who am I as Madura. Do you know about the origin of Madura? Yes, I know, and etc. And if you go to Java, who are you? Do you know about some of the story or the original story, like in legend or folktale and fairy tale from Java? And you said that, yeah, you know for sure, uh, absolutely, you are from Java, like Jakatarup, like Timun Mas or Golden Cucumber. It is a kind of the original story from Java. Well, in Europe, the children literature and identity will date back in 19th or 18th century, 18th till 19th century in Europe. For example, in Scandinavia. In Scandinavia, if we talk about Scandinavia, we will talk about some of the countries like Sweden, like Denmark, Norway, Finland, and also Iceland. It is Scandinavian countries, and you know that they also try to raise up their identity as Scandinavian. They try. So in Scandinavia, the strongest country, the strongest kingdom in the past time is Sweden, and Sweden occupied almost the whole of Scandinavian country, like in Finland, like Norway, Denmark, occupied by Sweden. And after that, after Sweden lost in the war with Russia, Scandinavia occupied by Russia. So it is really important for them to have the identity as the nation. We are Scandinavian. But what is our identity? First, usually the identity will be symbolized by language. But secondly, the identity will be symbolized by the folktale and fairy tales that originally from their society. Because for a fairy tale and folktale, it is a kind of the custom, a kind of the social identity and also culture. Okay, and next is Czech Republic, for example. Some of the children's stories, like legend, like fairy tale, folktale from Czech Republic and Slovakia, it is using for national revival after the Habsburg Empire. You know that like Scandinavia and also Czech Republic, it is occupied almost 300 years until 400 years. If Czech Republic occupied by Habsburg Empire in Germany and Austria and also Hungary, Scandinavia it is occupied by Sweden Empire. That's why they need to revive. They need to raise up. They need to have the national awakening. That's why they try to rewrite about folktale and fairy tales that kind of typical Scandinavian, typical of Czech and Slovakia. And also in Slovenia, for example, it is the children literature also related with the national awakening after Habsburg Empire. It is all 400 years, I think. Yeah. So, like in Scandinavia, Czech Republic, and also Slovenia, mostly the children literature and identity use to gain their identity as one of the nation after the colonization of one country or one empire.
Okay, there are some example of the characteristics and identity, and also some of outstanding authors from some country, some countries in Europe. First is Bohemia and Moravia. It is recording in Czech Republic and Slovakia Republic, Bohemian and Moravian. As I told you before, that because Slovakia and Czech Republic, or Bohemia and Moravia, at the first time, it is only a part of another empire. So usually they're typical of the story will tell about the royal family and also ordinary people. It is like the clever princess. The clever princess is the princess in the castle, but it is not a real princess as the daughter of the king. But actually, if we talk about the princess here, it is only the daughter of the duke. Duke is also noble family, but it is not king or king and the queen daughter. And usually in some of Bohemia and Moravia, Czech Republic story, it will tell about the marriage between farmer or the ordinary people and princess, or merchant and the queen, or maybe yeah, like the carpenter and the princess, but not with the king, because it is the absence of the king, because they don't have the king, because the king is in Habsburg Empire, not in Bohemia and Moravia. And also chatting of the devil here, for example, Lucifer, the cheating of the devil, Lucifer. It is stupid Lucifer. I'm sorry if I talk about stupid Lucifer, because you can cheat Lucifer. The ordinary people cheated Lucifer. The princess or the prince cheated Lucifer. But you know that the evil is not really, the devil is not really evil. It is a part or a half of angel, a half of devil. So they have the round character. It could be good, it could be in one side very bad. It is the typical story from Bohemia, Moravia. You can read like in Kid and the Devil, or maybe you can read the story like Clever Princess from Czech Republic, or from Bohemia and Moravia story. And the outstanding authors, Božena Nemcová and Karel Jaromír Erben. Božena Nemcová, called as a mother of prose in Bohemia, and Karel Jaromír Erben is father of folktales in Bohemia and Moravia. And both of them also the activists of the national revival in Bohemia and Moravia at that time, in around 19th century. So Božena Nemcová and Karel Jaromír Erben went around the village, make the dialogue, make the interview with some of the villagers, and try to document it, some of the story from the pagan era, and rewrite it into one of the good literary children literature, literary fairy tales. And from Slovenia story of Slovenia identity cannot neglected with the story of Jason and Argonaut. It is Jason and Argonaut is the mythology from the Greek. It is telling about the Jason and Argonaut. Argonaut is the name of the soldier and the ship that can walk, working on the land and working on the water. And Jason and Argonaut going to gain or to claim the golden fleece, but the golden fleece was guarded by the flying dragon.
and Jason and Argonaut, Jason and his soldier, involved in the battle with the dragon, the flying dragon in Lublanica River, and then Jason could kill the dragon and claim the Medea, the princess, and also claim the golden fleece. To commemorate the death of the dragon, so they give name the place with Ljubljana, and now the capital city of Slovenia, and they build the statue of the flying dragon over there. So there is a very famous and still existed until now, until today, the statue of flying dragon in one of the bridge. They call it Dragon Bridge. And if we talk about the Slovenian character in their uh, children's stories, they talk about royal family and also ordinary people as well, like in Czech Republic, like in Slovenia and Moravia, because in Slovenia it is also a part of Habsburg Empire for sure, as well, for around 400 years as a part of Habsburg Empire. So Slovenia is only one of the province in Habsburg Empire. So that, yeah, they don't have the character of king and queen, but their character usually only prince and the princess. But prince and princess here is not the son and the daughter of the king and the queen, but only the son and the son and the daughter of the duke and the duchess in that live or stay and stick out in Ljubljana in Slovenia. And also the second is about the dragon and Christianity. Dragon because of the legend of Argonaut, and Christianity because Ljubljana or Slovenia is in the border with Rome, with Italy. So that's the influence of Christianity is really strong. You can read the Golden Bird folktale and fairy tale anthology from Vladimir Kavčík, one of the outstanding author from Slovenia, and another outstanding author is Monica Kropey. Monica Kropey is the writer. Usually, she wrote about the legend and folk tales, not fairy tale, but the folk tales from Slovenia. She's still alive until today because Monica Kropey is one of my teacher. Okay, and in Nordic or in Scandinavia, it is also the same motif, like the character telling about the royal family and ordinary people between the farmer or merchant or carpenter with royal family. Because why? Because in Nordic, like in Finland, like in Norway, like in Denmark, in the past time, also almost 400 years under the empire of Sweden. And yeah, it is a very, yeah, I don't know, it is maybe the typical, it is a little bit unique from Nordic folktale and fairy tales, because they also much more telling about the killing of Swedish, you know, because 400 years occupied by the Swedish. So in Norway and also Finland, folktale and fairy tales, many of the hero kill a lot of Swedish because the hatred to the Sweden, because Sweden also as the colonizer, there are suggested as the colonizer, and the outstanding writer from Nordic is a Nordic story or Norway folktale and fairy tale is Peter Christian Abs Jorsen and Jürgen Moe. They are very famous writer from Nordic. Okay,
That's all I tell you about the social, cultural, and also identity context in children literature, and maybe we will go to the assignment. So it is your assignment. You can read Enid Blyton's The Famous Five. It is very famous story, children's story, and please you analyze its context. So minimum 700 words, but maximum is only 1,500 words. Time duration 2 weeks. So next week you don't have the class, and maybe this assignment is also I consider it as your online middle test. Okay, thank you, and yeah, good luck.